The Bliss of the Abyss.
Welcome back to The Bliss of the Abyss. My name's Robert Neumark Jones, and today on the show we have Albert Bramante, PhD. Albert Bramante is a talent agent and psychology professor based in the United States on the Northeast Coast, representing a diverse talent roster working across Broadway, film, television, commercials and print. But he's also a talented published author using psychological insights and industry strategy to help develop long-term purpose-driven success and nurture talent through all the ups and downs and the self-doubts and the blocks that anyone can experience throughout a career. So in this conversation, we discuss changes in the industry and things like self-taping, diversity in casting, but also some more of the psychological aspects, such as confidence, intrusive thoughts, the career ups and downs, or psychological blocks such as imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, Judas syndrome, and so much more. This is a really fascinating conversation that manages to jam into quite a short space of time. Albert was generous with what he had, but we only had a short window. Nevertheless, we cover a lot here. So for anyone who's starting out in the industry and is curious about what to do with their time, for anyone who's been in it for a while, might be experiencing a peak or a trough, or for anyone who's just curious about ways that we can talk ourselves in and out of situations, this is the episode for you. So without any further ado, I present my talk with Albert Bramante. So, Albert Bramante, thank you so much for coming on The Bliss of the Abyss.
Well, thank you, Robert, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I was really interested to talk to you today. I know we've got a lot we want to cover in a relatively short space of time, so I'm really happy to just jump straight in. But for those in the audience who don't know who you are, maybe you could tell us a bit about your backstory, who you are, and how you've come to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I'm based in New Jersey, New York, in the United States, and I own a talent agency in New York. I represent actors full-time for film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and some voiceover work. And I've been doing it for about 21 years now. Wow. I also have a background in psychology, a PhD, and, I've been doing this ever since. My book, I also wrote a book last year called Rise Above the Script, Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. So it's a topic that is kind of near and dear to me.
And is there anything you don't do?
I don't play sports. I can't sing and dance. So that's,
Well, we'll see.
I'll spare your audience on that one. I want to be nice to them. I don't want to horrify them.
By the end of the interview, I guarantee you'll be the all singing, all dancing Albert Bramante. That much, I promise.
Well, okay,
we'll see. So you said you've got 20 years in the industry as well as obviously. Mm-hmm. About psychology and all kinds of interesting things. I know you want to mention imposter syndrome. I think that's a very interesting topic, particularly relevant, of course, to the entertainment industry, but also other industries and people who will be interested in general. But just looking back over 20 years in entertainment, what would you say have been sort of the main changes? I think a lot of people are interested today about CGI and AI and things like that.
Yeah.
But those are all very recent changes. So I'm wondering if you can cast the net back a bit further and then bring us up to the modern day.
Sure. When I first started, this is when you had the actual hard copy headshots and resumes, and most of the headshots were in black and white when I first started. And I remember, as an agent, we used to, we would get the dailies, which are now known the breakdowns, but it was the dailies at the time. And we actually had to put physical packages together and deliver them to casting directors, for whatever projects they're working on for the day, whether it was, a movie of the week or, theater or, soaps or episodics, TV shows. And so the biggest change, I'd say, around the late 2000s was that kind of stopped the physical submissions, and everything moved to electronic, which I am happy about. That it's much more economical and easier. So that was, I would say, the primary first change since I started was move from everything to electronic, and also almost every headshot is in color now.
Yeah.
Where it was very odd in the beginning if you had color, when I first started. So those are two big changes. And then around 2013, 2014, what started happening with Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu started getting into the production game. They started producing TV shows. Again, when I first started, Netflix was the movie rental place. You wanted to rent movie,
Yeah, it was a blockbuster DVD format via post, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's almost gone due the post method. Everything is all streaming now. Yeah. But so when Netflix and Amazon and Hulu came in the game, the amount of TV projects that our office would be working on jumped from like maybe 10 a year to almost 80 a year. It was like a skyrocket, and it was amazing. Because now we had so many opportunities that were available to us. Another change that I started seeing was the casting options, the choices. Like it started opening up, which is a good thing, to diversity and inclusion. And so it was both ethnicity, sexual orientation. It became more inclusive and more open. And so that was, I'd say, one of the biggest, another big change was the, breakdowns, the quality, the types. And then, of course, we had COVID. And I think the biggest change is almost, I don't want to say but almost like the elephant in the room for most actors, is self-tapes.
Definitely.
When, prior to COVID, very rarely, unless a project was out of town or an actor was out of town, they would submit a videotape. Otherwise, everybody went in person to an audition and, to a cat. I mean, we didn't, we would never know what was going on. Now, the benefit of self-tapes, there are a couple benefits. From my perspective as an agent, I can kind of see what my talent are doing, what my clients are doing. Versus before, I would just have to guess. Like sometimes they would say, "Why am I not booking?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't, accompany you to the auditions, so I don't know what's." But now I can see stuff, and so there's things I can pick up. That's another Also, the benefit of self tapes is they can see more people per role. Whereas when everything was in person and by appointment only, you only had a certain number of slots that they could fill up.
Right, of course. How many you can get in and out of the door in any given period of time.
And a lot of some actors love self tape, some don't. And there are challenges. I mean, the challenge of a self tape is you don't get much feedback. So the only because again, just like with every audition, the casting director is only going to communicate to us if they book the job or if they're in close contention. Otherwise, we don't know what's going on, in a sense, when we send the tape in. And the actors aren't getting the direction that they used to get when they would go into the room. So they're missing that a little bit. Now the advantage, again, another advantage is you don't have to leave your house. And you could do so many takes over and over again if you're not happy. Whereas when you're live in a room, you only get maybe one or maybe two times, and that's it, and you're done.
Right, and if you muck up in the room, then that is forever in their brain that you screwed up. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Or at least if you muck up on a self tape, you can just erase and re-record.
Yeah, that's right. So it sounds like you're kind of singing the benefits of self tapes, but I have to say, amongst my cohort, a lot of us we miss the days of being able to go back in because it's become the norm now as opposed to the exception. So much so that it's almost like a treat if you actually get to go in and do something in person.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, again, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's good. There's the positive and negatives of both sides, if you think about it. Again, the positive side with self-tapes is you don't necessarily have to be specifically chained to one location. You can work. As long as you can get yourself on set or on wherever it is, then technically, you can be really anywhere to self-tape.
Yeah.
So that's one advantage. But you are right. There is not that human connection anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and considering, the craft is all about empathy and connection and portrayal of stories, I think some people struggle thinking, oh, have I got the technical sides right? Is the lighting okay? Are they seeing my face? Is my microphone or my camera okay? And they're now worried more about that than just about, am I doing a good performance, which is
Yeah.
perhaps a bit more nebulous. Do you see it at any point swinging back towards more in person, or at least maybe addressing the balance so that it swings a little bit more that way? Or do you think we've changed just like we did with headshots now?
I think we've changed to some level. Stage, if you're doing stage or, whether it's singing and dancing, those are pretty much in person, at least for the callback.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would kind of think that would be a way to go there. Would be, to embrace a new thing. What I've had seen sometimes is they give an option, at least in New York, where it's like you only have a limited number of spots and you got to respond, first come, first serve. But they'll say sometimes in a breakdown, or in an audition invite, we're seeing people tomorrow from 11 to 1, sign up for a spot like immediately, which is a good thing. I think it's kind of like a middle ground.
Yeah, I've seen some of these as well, and I know if I'm ever offered the option, I'll always pick the meeting, even if it's a virtual meeting, rather than just the tape.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too. Like whether it's a Zoom or or a virtual appointment, because at least there's another human being, and you can get direction and any adjustments that you need to make.
That's interesting.
The bliss of the abyss, it's here now.
Speaking about the change from castings to being more inclusive and open, I find this a really interesting topic because there's no doubt that it's been a benefit for not only the quality of stuff produced, but also the breadth and width of stuff produced. I wonder also, has it put some people within a box? This idea of being, what's that word? Casting, where it's typecasting. Has that, in some ways, also narrowed some of these categories? What do you think?
Somehow, yeah. I mean, sometimes it can be, I know some actors might say this is a little bit of reverse discrimination on some level too.
Right.
But I haven't seen it like necessarily putting into a box. Sometimes stereotypes is like, still creeping up in the breakdowns here and there, like a couple of weeks ago, it's like, we need someone in the crowd loud and obnoxious, preferably a person of color. I'm like, okay, interesting.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. There's almost like, why didn't they keep that bit under their hats? It's kind of showing their discrimination.
I mean, I would think, in some aspects, okay, if that's what you're going to hire, great. Nobody can stop that. But at least now you're putting in writing, which is kind of like now people can say that there's discrimination.
Yeah. That's curious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing. There's something that recently changed over here. The main way that breakdowns come to performers over here is a platform called Spotlight. And they recently added sort of an ethnicity heritage checkbox. And I know some actors are very happy about that, and some feel almost hesitant to tick it in the idea that, will this narrow actually my opportunities? Will certain people only see me as this kind of role or performer? And I think that there was a big scandal here. So I'm Jewish. There was a big scandal here about this thing called Jew face, which is actors who are not Jewish getting cast in Jewish roles. And I think part of the idea of this heritage tick box was to try and address some of these things and make sure that there is representation. But then also, are you narrowing the creative breadth of what a performer can do? And play, so in part one of that question, and then part two, playing into your psychological thing and imposter syndrome thing, how much do you think that potential narrowing, if it is there, or if you want to disagree with me, that's good too, then eats into the actor's psyche of, am I good enough or correct enough for this role?
Yeah, no, self-doubt comes in there a lot there too. Sometimes some actors will be like, no, they may not feel right for it. I do know that authenticity is somewhat important for a lot of my clients too.
Mm.
Like, for example, if a role is trans, they don't want, it should only be played by a trans person. That's how a lot of my clients would feel.
Right.
And so I think that authenticity is probably more a key here. Being authentic and telling, real stories of real people, especially in New York, where it's a cosmopolitan, of all races and ethnicities.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are right when I do kind of put it out there, because a couple of years ago, right, even before COVID, they did put out a breakdown for Hamilton.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like every breakdown was non-white, looking for someone who's non-white.
Mm-hmm.
And that really started sparking out, kind of an outrage.
Really?
Because they felt like it was, discrimination. I did see the musical, so it does make sense, what they were putting out there. I don't think they had any malice or anything. I think they actually, because most of the time the cast is non-white. I think they had good intentions, but maybe was a little too explicit.
Yeah. Okay. So these things, it sounds like it's constantly sort of a pendulum, and it kind of overcorrects one way and then tends to swing further the other way to overcorrect, and never quite. Maybe for a golden period, it is in that middle, but often it's a bit further towards one or the other extreme.
Right.
I wonder how much that is shift in culture and perception, and versus just shifts in the industry, because something like headshots. When I first started, we also had physical headshots, and actually, black and white headshots are still more common in the UK, but are becoming less common as well.
Okay.
And I can't envisage us swinging back to, let's go all the way back to black and white.
Yeah, I think those are behind us. Those days are behind us.
Yeah, but there are certain things where it's sort of like the culture moves this way and trends follow it, and then there are certain things where trends sort of just die out and seem to be done.
Yeah,
and that's an interest. Do you think that's part of an industry thing? Do you think that's the industry following the culture, vice versa, or something else?
I think it's actually kind of an interaction. I think the industry is affecting culture, culture is affecting the industry.
Yeah.
Because I think the industry really wanted to tell more authentic and real stories rather than having, these Hollywood types play these roles.
I think you might be right. Yeah. And you said that you sort of look after a big stable of performers. So you must have come across all of the range of issues that they all bring.
Oh yeah.
And as we both know, that is a broad range. What would you say are some of the most common complaints or issues or problems that performers have, and what would be some of your advice for overcoming some of them?
So the biggest thing again would be the complaints about the self-tapes. And I try to, because people also would complain about auditions back in the day, but I often would reframe it, this is your time to show how to work, how you can work. Take this as an opportunity to show work and not be so much attached to the outcome. I think that's the first thing I would say. As far as then you get some that are very disgruntled, bitter about the industry. And I think, being patient is great, and sometimes, but, sometimes if they get too disgruntled, I have to let them, off the roster.
Right. The bitterness starts to creep in and affect the ability to do good work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is obviously a death knell for that performer's abilities. Yeah. Is there someone that you've talked back from the bitterness who's then gone on to shine and rediscover their love, or do you find that there's some people who just get too far gone?
There's some people who just like too far gone. And I think I wouldn't say too far gone. I think it's when you stop enjoying this,
Right.
and then maybe time to find another profession. Not that you can't do it, but the fact that you don't even like doing it. You got to love what you do in a sense.
Yeah, that's right. And from the performer's point of view, I think probably from an outsider's perspective, it's probably fairly intuitive in terms of like loving what we do because it's performing, which is what we want to do, doing a good performance and showing people that and having people enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
From your side of it, from the management and the production side of things, what are the things about that you really enjoy, and what are some of the projects that you look back on and think, yeah, they were excellent, and some of the reasons for that?
Yeah, I mean, I book a lot of TV here in New York, and that's always exciting. I mean, just to watch someone do a guest star spot on SVU, or FBI, and then know that, hey, I helped, facilitate that. So I think that's how, would do it there. That's one of the biggest achievements is the fact that I got to facilitate a win.
Onto this big show where a lot of people want to be part of it and it's difficult to get in. Yeah. Fantastic. And is that like a vicarious enjoyment? Do you have any desires yourself to perform, or is it just seeing other people?
No, I look at myself as a connector. Like I connect people, and it's like almost like for puzzle, in the sense like trying to fit the pieces into a puzzle. So it's exciting for me. But yeah, I don't have any ambition to be a performer. But I do love being around actors. I did in the past when I first started. I did a brief stint as an actor, did a couple commercials, did background in a couple films, and I realized that it wasn't for me. But I loved actors. Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people in a lot of my colleagues started the same way. They were actors or, studying actors, and then they came to this side.
And what are the advantages to the side that you're on? Is it more stable? Do you find it more rewarding?
Much more rewarding because again, it's not just if I'm an actor, I'm only looking out for me. I'm looking out for now over 200 people.
And do you find the weight of responsibility sometimes with that quite daunting? That's a lot of people who are sort of putting their hopes and dreams in your hands.
I mean, it's an honor that they do that, and I look at it like this: we're partners. It's not you're not just totally 100% surrendering your career. You should never do that as an actor when you're going to have representation. It's a partnership. The way I look at it, it's a partnership, and we're in this together. So. A lot of times we use a sister company of what you use for follow. It's called Breakdown Services in New York.
Yeah.
So the daily breakdowns come out in a sense. So that's sort of like where we would find the information in a sense.
Mm-hmm. You are listening to Bliss of the Abyss. Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to someone who's listening to this, who's just starting out, what would be some of the advice that you could give them?
So, first of all, welcome. What I would say is start doing some student films, start doing some short films, start doing a couple of, even if they're small theater houses, do some shows, get some traction, get some clips for your reel, get some experience, get some credits. And then we could maybe talk, a little bit later about representation.
Right. So I'm sure you see people who are sort of, well, ideally fresh out of drama school, but also just complete amateurs as well, reaching out, being like, when am I going to star in the next Hollywood movie? And
mm-hmm. I love those calls. Like, when am I going to, okay, or sometimes I'm going to call, like, I want to be a celebrity. I'm like, well, that's not, you don't have to be an actor to be a celebrity.
Right. Yeah. It goes the other way, but not necessarily that way.
Yeah.
That's the rise of that celebrity culture. Has been an interesting thing for the performers, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
changed who is seen on screen. You get a lot of non-actors in acting roles.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
go
can
on.
be challenging,
Yeah,
like for example, a couple of years, like maybe 8 or 9 years ago, they were casting a new Marvel show, a TV show, and initially the producer wanted to only have people who had like, hundreds of thousands of social media followers audition,
right.
which was a very odd request for a TV show.
Yeah,
And so they did it. Of course, they hired a cast director, and the cast director was like, "We'll do this." So they spent 2 or 3 days reading these well, I don't want to say actors, reading these influencers
yeah.
to hopefully get them on the show. And I remember they came later and said, "This is a train wreck." It was a train wreck. Because they spent like 2 or 3 days holding casting sessions, and they said most of them couldn't act. They could do whatever you wanted them to do.
That's right. And that's an interesting question that I wanted to raise with you, because we do live in an era where outreach and um, uh, audience size on social media is really important. And sometimes these things get blended together,
Mm-hmm.
but they're fundamentally, of course, very different sets of skills. So how important would you say it is for an actor these days to have an active or a large social media presence?
I have a different opinion, and my opinion is I don't think it matters unless you're maybe want to do commercials or brand deals, and maybe you would need a large following. But if it's just a little bit, that's fine, in a sense, it's getting your name out there.
I think people will be pleased to hear that, because I know I have friends who are performers, certainly some who just don't like social media, or some who are a bit older who think, they're not really interested in it, and they're worried that is that
Mm-hmm.
the be all and end all now, and will I be left behind if I'm not posting on TikTok daily to my hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of followers? But you seem to be saying that there's a space for that, and there's a place
Oh yeah,
that's not as important as some people.
I think for me, at least my experience, it helps with commercials sometimes. I haven't really seen that work for TV and film, at least in a good way. Because going back, what I said before, when they did that, 3-day casting session for series leads, they didn't find anybody.
Yeah.
They like,
Right.
they had all these people doing, crazy stuff, but it was like they didn't find anybody they liked. So that can sometimes happen.
Yeah, and then there's obvious crossover between certain industries, isn't there? Like you see comedians or stunt performers or circus acts or drag who are able to cross over into the world of straight acting or musicals. But for me, that has a much more direct parallel, where they're already performing, they're already entertaining to an audience and understanding the back and forth of that and the craft of it, as opposed to just uploading clips, doing crazy things, or garnering attention.
Right.
So do you see the trajectory in terms of all that stuff going in a certain direction? Do you think it's going to stay how it is now?
I think it's going to stay how it is now because, again, that doesn't really matter for a lot for TV and film, or unless it's specifically related to that. But I haven't really seen anything that at least on the TV film theater side.
The only thing we're sort of going to see a Hollywood big blockbuster starring KSI and Jake Paul anytime soon.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I'd enjoy that, but I don't.
One thing I noticed that you mentioned about was imposter syndrome, and I do wonder with some of those people I mentioned, not specifically calling out KSI and Jake Paul. I don't really know their content particularly, but I mean I know they're not trained actors or anything. I wonder if they were to be cast in these things, would they feel any sort of imposter syndrome, or would they sort of feel like, yeah, this is where I belong? What do you think?
I don't know. I really don't know. If they're totally comfortable performing, they're going to think, okay, this is where I belong. If they're not, then they're going to be like, I need to get out of here fast.
Perform an escape hatch surgery. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had a client call you up and say, look, I'm part of this and I'm way out of my depth and I can't do it. You need to pull me out. And have you ever done it, or have you taught them back over across
I never really had that happen, but I mean, sometimes they would have a little bit of doubt, and I would just talk them through it, and they wound up being okay. It really depends again on how extreme.
Why do you think it is that people have imposter syndrome? It seems to be something not only in this industry, it seems to be just a human phenomenon.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole idea, even with a little bit of self doubt, which it starts as self doubt, which
Yeah.
is normal. It's average to doubt yourself sometimes. But if you have, let's say you grew up in a household where, maybe your parents weren't that supportive as you would want them to be or hope to be, so then it could subconsciously transform that to your adult relationships where you just don't feel productive or authentic. And especially if you're an actor who hasn't booked work in a while and you went to school for BFA or MFA and spent, almost $80,000 on a degree, you're not able to use it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the biggest thing, is the self doubt that comes in, and then you start to wonder, am I doing the right thing? And then you start with the self doubt, thinking, am I really the best person for this job? And then you start thinking, well, of ways you're not qualified.
And so these are, I guess, these are mindset blocks that can become quite large, quite hefty, quite weighty, and difficult to shift. But presumably, it is possible to shift them. So, what are some of the techniques and tools that you found effective for people with these blocks?
Well, I think first thing is the insight, knowing that you have them. It's probably the first breakthrough. It's to know you made it, and it's that, or that you, and that it's first. It's to add more to that. It's even okay, to have that a little bit.
Yeah.
You're human beings. They're estimated we have 400, 40,000 thoughts plus that go through our mind each day.
Right.
We only pay attention to a small percentage of them.
Right.
So, what I would say is know your why. Like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? And then kind of remind the actor, like, look, you went to 4 years of training.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a university or a conservatory setting, you've done the training. You wouldn't have passed the program if you couldn't act.
Yes. It's just reminding them of that fact. It's like, listen, you're good enough to make it to here, and there's a reason for that.
Yes. And then, if you feel you're, being challenged or it's too intense, the next thing to do is to take a step back and say, what do you need to do to get better at this? Do you need to take more classes with that? Do you need to study more about a certain topic, whether it's an accent or a dialect or, a special skill? You need to practice more. And I often kind of say, like, this is an industry, this is this is not a sprint, it's a long-term marathon. So don't expect right things to happen right away. It may take a while. And so the one thing, as far as like, with looking at measuring success, in New York, and I'm sure everywhere else, even though there's a lot of actors, the casting community is small. So if you have keep getting called in by the same casting director, I mean, that's telling me a lot. So I'll point that out. I'm like, well, because they don't have to keep calling you back in. They do, because it's just now a matter. It's not if you book, it's when you'll book. When's the right role for it? That you'll pop in there for. So I think what the point is just being patient. Because sometimes I'll actors be like, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years since I graduated. Why is nothing happening? And I'll reframe and say, no, it's been only 2 years.
Nice. Yeah.
And so that's something where I'll remind them of why that is the case.
Yeah, I guess it's that same adage of takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation type thing.
Yeah, I mean, because you hear about, oh, well, so-and-so made that big break. They just happened to be walking in the park and being approached by a casting director.
Yeah.
But you didn't hear that they were an actor waiting tables for 10 years prior to that. They're not going to tell you that story. There was a big show in the States, I'd say around 2017, which is called This Is Us.
Oh, yes.
Those actors, the series regular, the main cast, were easily acting for 30 years before they got their first, series regular role. So that's where it's another thing I demonstrate. Like, look, this takes time and practice.
And how do you help those actors who aren't booking stuff keep their head above water? Do you have advice for them when they're, say resting?
Take more if it comes to a point where it's a long time, take classes.
Mm-hmm.
Take an audition class. Work with an audition coach, and then figure that out too. What project are you submitting for? How often are you submitting yourself? How often are you working to generate auditions? That's a big one too. Not just waiting for a store to come, or anything to come to you.
What advice would you give for them for how they can find those opportunities?
Go to film festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Network with filmmakers, because a lot of times filmmakers are there to, they're networking themselves, and if you introduce yourself as an actor, maybe they'll put you, at some point, or give you an audition for their next film. Film festivals, volunteer, creative and custom content too. I mean, we're in the creator economy. Our phones have good capability. Shoot something, shoot a scene. So a lot of things you can do, and just keep networking. That's the biggest thing too, because it's all about personal relationships in the industry.
Yeah.
Meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a big one, which is a challenge sometimes for actors, because a lot of actors I know are introverted, which that's a big challenge, but it's really needed.
Yeah, and I guess for those actors who find it hard to do that, would the advice be that to treat it almost like a performance, like a role when they go into...
Absolutely. And I was listening once to an actor who, he was one of those types of actors that you'll know if you see his face but not his name. And what he was saying is, the 2 minutes he gets to audition, he's performing and he's having fun. And I thought it was such a powerful reframe, because it puts less stakes into it, and it gets you out of your head, because you're just playing. You're not doing anything. So when you have the less attached outcomes, people tend to perform well on those.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I can see the crossroad here between entertainment and psychology as well. Was it your experience in the industry that drew you towards doing a PhD and psychology, or vice versa, or would you say a blend? I don't know.
It was a blend. I mean, maybe the end of my first year of being an agent, as I'm enrolled to a PhD program, because at the time I already had a master's degree.
Right.
And I wasn't. I mean, I knew I was going to do this for a while, being an agent, but I wasn't entirely sure how long this was going to last. I was like, I need a backup plan. So, and I've already got 6 years for my bachelor's and master's. Might as well do the remaining rest at this point. And I did my doctoral thesis and dissertation on actors and self-sabotage. So, which I turned into a book, several years later. Not the actual full dissertation, but ideas I generated from it and put it, into the book.
Wow, a PhD is a hell of a backup plan. That's pretty impressive.
Thanks.
And what does the book cover? Let's plug the book now if we can. What's it called?
Sure. It's called Rise Above the Script: Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists.
Right, great. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so people who are interested in that can seek that out and and
it's available. I have it on paperback, ebook, Kindle, and then audiobook. So it's on. Right. On most major distributions I have it out on.
And who did you have read the audiobook? Was it you, or did you get a performer to do it? Or were you not?
I actually did a voice lab type of thing, where I hired someone to do it.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really interesting. I find that really interesting. Was there getting involved in the publishing world? Was that a totally new experience? Were there parallels, or was that a new game with new players that you had to sort of start over again with?
Well, my book is self-published, so that was a venture in itself, exciting. To look at the draft, that was like the first time when I submitted to the editor to when it was published, was like a really amazing thing to watch that and actually hold it in my hands. It was like, wow, this is real.
Any plans to write another?
Oh, yeah. I have a couple ideas spinning.
Anything you can tease us with now?
They're a little bit different. They're not related necessarily to acting. One of them is going to be on people pleasing, martyr syndrome, and the other one's going to be on gaslighting for home and business.
Oh, very interesting. Those are all very topical. I've not heard of martyr syndrome. I suppose I could guess what it is, but for those who don't know, could you explain?
Sure. So martyr syndrome is like when you put everybody else's needs above yourself, and it's almost like you start acting, in a sense, masochistic, where you punish yourself. Like for example, making sure everybody else eats, but you'll be okay starving because that's the way it is. So you kind of just start shooting, really just working against yourself.
It's so interesting because, and obviously a lot of people just become a performer. They just, I don't know, they want to sing and dance or they want to tell jokes or whatever it is. But underneath any of these sort of more basic things, there's a whole host of really interesting and quite deep things that talk to the essence of what it is to be human and our psyche.
Yeah. Well, it's all about, the human connection there. So
absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much, Albert, for giving me your time and being generous with your time. I know you have an out, and I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Yeah, Robert, I want to thank you for inviting me on. It was really good to chat with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care, Albert. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please give us 5 stars and consider becoming a subscriber and maybe even supporting us on Patreon. Really, really, really helps me continue making this show. If you haven't enjoyed it, then you can fuck off. Many, many thanks to Nils Hennis-Steer for the amazing music and to Dave Fox for the cool artwork. Please keep coming back every week for more Bliss of the Abyss.
Message 1.